The Unfolding Shadow, Chapter 1. The Weight of Grief and a Glimmer of Gold. Boston, Massachusetts, 2026. The silence in the house was a heavy shroud, far more profound than any noise. It had settled upon Amelia Thorne like a thick, suffocating blanket since her mother, Eleanor, had passed away 3 weeks prior. At 38, Amelia was an architect, a woman who built order from chaos, who found solace in blueprints and the predictable strength of steel and glass. But now her own carefully constructed world lay in ruins. Eleanor, her vibrant, opinionated, deeply loving mother, had been the bedrock of her existence. And now she was gone. The funeral had been a blur of tear-streaked faces, hushed condolences, and the unbearable finality of lowering a casket into the earth. Amelia had felt numb, a spectator to her own grief, unable to fully process the seismic shift in her life. She'd always imagined Eleanor, a force of nature, would live forever. The reality was a gaping wound. The house, a charming Victorian in Beacon Hill, was now Amelia's. Every room echoed with Eleanor's presence, the scent of her rosewater perfume, the faint scent of old books from her study, the warmth of her favorite armchair by the fireplace. It was both a comfort and a torment. Amelia was trying to navigate the daunting task of settling Eleanor's affairs. Stacks of papers, legal documents, sentimental mementos. A lifetime distilled into boxes. It was overwhelming, and each item felt like a new stab of pain, a tangible reminder of what she had lost. One crisp autumn afternoon, as the leaves outside turned fiery shades of red and gold, Amelia sat in Eleanor's study, surrounded by a mountain of paperwork. She was sifting through a box of old jewelry, mostly costume pieces Eleanor had collected over the years, a riot of sparkling baubles and tarnished silver. Amelia picked up a heavy, ornate silver locket, a familiar piece from her mother's everyday wear. It was cold in her hand. Nestled beneath the locket, glinting dully, was something else. A small wooden box, not a jewelry box, but a simple, unadorned box of dark, polished mahogany, about the size of a paperback book. It had a delicate brass clasp, aged and slightly tarnished, but no visible lock. It felt surprisingly heavy for its size. Amelia frowned. She had never seen this box before. Her mother was meticulously organized, yet this box seemed out of place. It had no identifying marks. No labels, just smooth, dark wood. Curiosity, a faint flicker against the backdrop of her grief, stirred within her. She tried the clasp. It was firmly shut, unyielding, despite the lack of a visible keyhole. Almost as if it was sealed by something other than a lock. Amelia tried to pry it open gently, then with more force. Nothing. The box remained stubbornly closed, a silent, enigmatic presence. She sighed, a frustrated breath. Another puzzle, another thing she couldn't understand, in a world that suddenly made no sense. She placed the box on Eleanor's large, antique desk, amidst the organized chaos of her mother's life. Later that evening, after a dinner she barely tasted, Amelia returned to the study, drawn by the unsettling allure of the mysterious box. She picked it up again, turning it over in her hands. The wood felt cool, strangely comforting. As her fingers traced the smooth surface, she noticed something. A faint, almost invisible inscription on the bottom, hidden beneath years of dust and grime. She wiped it with her thumb, and the letters slowly emerged, carved into the wood with delicate precision. For Amelia, my dearest, only when you are ready. Tears pricked at Amelia's eyes. A message from her mother. But what was she supposed to be ready for? And why was it hidden? Why was the box so resistant to opening? She continued to search through Eleanor's belongings, driven by a new, almost desperate urgency. She opened drawers, sifted through old photo albums, even checked the pockets of Eleanor's old coats. Nothing. No key. Days turned into a week. The box sat on the desk, a silent, compelling presence. Amelia kept trying the clasp, hoping for a miracle, hoping for some hidden mechanism to reveal itself. But it remained stubbornly shut. Then she remembered the will, Eleanor's will. It was to be read by her lawyer on Friday. Perhaps there would be a clue there, a small, desperate hope, a fragile thread to cling to in the vast tapestry of her grief. Friday arrived, a gray, overcast day mirroring Amelia's mood. In the austere office of Mr. Davies, Eleanor's longtime attorney, Amelia sat, her sister Clara beside her, as Mr. Davies read Eleanor's last wishes. The will was straightforward, practical, just as Eleanor had been in life. Assets divided, beloved items bequeathed. And then at the very end, an unusual codicil. To my beloved daughter, Amelia, my most precious inheritance. It is not property nor wealth, but a truth that has long remained hidden. You will find it in the small mahogany box given to me many years ago. The key, my dearest, is not a physical one. It is a key of understanding, of readiness. It will present itself to you when your heart is open enough to receive what it holds. Seek not a lock, but a resonance, and when you find it, do not be afraid. It is a story of love, loss, and ultimately liberation. Amelia stared at Mr. Davies, then at Clara. A key of understanding? A resonance? What did it all mean? Her mother, always so pragmatic, had left her a riddle, a cryptic message from beyond the grave, and the box remained stubbornly closed, mocking her grief, her confusion. The weight of it felt immense. What truth could be so profound, so deeply hidden, that it required such an elaborate, almost mystical unlocking? What was she supposed to be ready for? The quiet hum of dread began to stir within her. Chapter 2. The Echo in the Silence. Amelia returned home from the lawyer's office, the cryptic words of Eleanor's will echoing in her mind. A key of understanding, of readiness. Seek not a lock, but a resonance. She placed the mahogany box on the coffee table, staring at it, willing it to reveal its secrets. It remained a dark, silent enigma. She confided in Clara, describing the box, the inscription, the strange codicil in the will. Clara, ever the practical one, frowned. Mom always loved a good mystery novel, but this is a bit much. A key of understanding? Maybe it's a trick, a puzzle, something only you and Mom shared. Amelia shook her head. No, this feels different. This feels important and a little unsettling. Why hide something so elaborately? What could be so profoundly unsettling that it needs such a veiled reveal? The question hung heavy in the air. Over the next few days, Amelia felt a growing restlessness. Her usual routines, her architectural designs, offered no solace. Her mind was consumed by the box. She tried everything she could think of. She held it, meditating, trying to feel some resonance. She placed it near objects that had belonged to Eleanor, hoping for a connection. She even tried speaking to it, whispering questions, as if it could hear her. Nothing. The grief, once numb, was now a sharp, constant ache. The silence in the house, once merely heavy, now felt alive, humming with unseen possibilities, unseen presences. Amelia found herself walking through Eleanor's study, touching her mother's things, remembering conversations, searching for a clue, a forgotten word, anything that might unlock the mystery. One evening, unable to sleep, Amelia found herself in Eleanor's vast personal library, a room filled with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, crammed with volumes on history, art, philosophy, and Eleanor's lifelong passion, old letters and diaries. Eleanor had been an amateur historian, particularly fascinated by personal narratives, the untold stories of ordinary lives. She often said that history wasn't just in grand events, but in the intimate whispers of forgotten lives. Amelia ran her hand along the spines of the books, feeling the texture of old paper, the weight of accumulated knowledge. She paused at a section dedicated to Boston's hidden histories, its forgotten scandals, its old families. Eleanor had always been intrigued by the layers of truth and deception hidden beneath the city's genteel surface. Then her fingers brushed against a slim, leather-bound volume, tucked almost invisibly amongst larger tomes. It was a blank journal, pristine and new, yet it felt somehow out of place amongst Eleanor's well-worn collection. Amelia pulled it out. It was heavy, its pages thick. She opened it. The first few pages were blank. Then, written in Eleanor's elegant, familiar script, was a single cryptic phrase. The echo remembers what the mind forgets. Seek the shadow in the light. Amelia frowned. More riddles. But this felt different. More personal. More direct. The echo remembers what the mind forgets. What did that mean? And seek the shadow in the light? She looked around the study, a sudden intuition striking her. The room was filled with light during the day, large windows overlooking the garden. But in the evenings, when the lamplight cast long dancing shadows, the room took on a different character. She thought of a specific antique globe in the corner, a beautiful, intricately detailed piece that Eleanor loved, constantly polishing it. Amelia approached the globe. It was illuminated by a small, directional spotlight, a feature Eleanor had installed to highlight its intricate cartography. As Amelia ran her hand over its surface, she noticed something. A faint, almost imperceptible symbol carved into the dark wood of the globe's stand, barely visible in the direct light, but casting a distinct shadow when viewed from a certain angle or in specific lighting. It was a single, stylized letter, M. Amelia's heart pounded. M? What did N stand for? It wasn't a common initial in their family. Her mind raced through possibilities. A place? A person? She quickly returned to the mahogany box. The clasp remained shut. No visible keyhole. But the will had spoken of a resonance. What if the key wasn't a physical object, but a sequence? A password, perhaps, or a specific interaction? She remembered something else. Her mother's love for classical music. Eleanor had a deep appreciation for complex compositions, for the way a single note, when held just right, could resonate through an entire piece. What if the letter M was a musical note, a specific key on a musical instrument? Amelia had a beautiful antique grand piano in the living room, a family heirloom, rarely played since Eleanor's passing. Eleanor had loved to play, filling the house with soaring melodies. Amelia, though not a skilled musician, remembered her mother often saying that some melodies, some harmonies, possessed an almost magical ability to unlock memories, to resonate with forgotten truths. With a mixture of trepidation and a growing sense of purpose, Amelia walked to the piano. She sat on the velvet bench, her fingers hovering over the keys. M. What note was M? She recalled her mother's lessons on musical scales, her insistence on the universal language of music. A quick search on her phone confirmed it. In musical notation, M could refer to middle C, or a specific musical mode, or even a symbol for a major chord. But in some older, less common notations, particularly those linked to cryptography or puzzle solving, M was sometimes used as a placeholder for a specific resonant note. The historical, almost secret musical key. She remembered the lullaby from her childhood, one Eleanor had often hummed, a simple, repetitive melody. And in that lullaby, there was a distinctive middle C, a note that grounded the melody, a resonance. Amelia pressed middle C on the piano. A single, clear note rang out, echoing through the silent house. It was a perfect, pure tone. And then, from the mahogany box sitting on the coffee table in the adjacent room, came a soft, almost imperceptible click. Not the sound of a spring releasing, but a deeper resonant sound, like a hidden mechanism engaging. Amelia gasped. Her heart leaped. She rushed back to the study. The box. The clasp was still visually shut. But when she touched it, it was no longer rigid. It moved, not opening, but yielding. The box felt different now. Lighter. Almost alive. The key of understanding. The resonance. It had been a musical note, a sound, a vibration, a frequency. And the M had guided her to it. The realization sent a chill down her spine. Her pragmatic, logical mind struggled to grasp the implications. Her mother had orchestrated an impossible puzzle, a profound, almost mystical challenge from beyond the grave. And now the box was ready to reveal the truth Eleanor had so carefully hidden. A truth she had been afraid to directly confront. What was inside? A name she was afraid of. The quiet dread in her stomach solidified. Chapter 3. The name that whispered fear. With trembling hands, Amelia approached the now yielding mahogany box. The clasp, though still technically closed, now moved freely. The box didn't spring open. It merely suggested it was ready. There was no visible lid or seam. Amelia knew her mother's love for intricate, hidden mechanisms. This wasn't a simple opening. She ran her fingers over its smooth surface, searching for a seam, a hidden button, a pressure point. Nothing. It remained a perfectly formed, seamless block of wood. But it felt different now, lighter, and a strange, almost imperceptible warmth emanated from its polished surface, a warmth that was not from her own hand. She remembered the cryptic phrase in Eleanor's journal. The echo remembers what the mind forgets, and the will. Seek not a lock, but a resonance. The single note, middle C, had achieved something. But what? Amelia placed the box on the desk, stepping back, trying to see it differently, to understand its true nature. She noticed that the grain of the wood, previously uniform, now seemed to ripple slightly, almost like water. And then she saw it, faintly, imperceptibly, in the very center of the top surface, a faint, glowing imprint. Not a physical mark, but a subtle, ethereal luminescence, like a breath on polished glass. It was a single, elegant letter, formed by light itself. A. Amelia's heart pounded. A. What did A stand for? Her own name. Amelia. But that made no sense. This box was for her. It was a gift from her mother. She thought of the resonance. What if the box responded to her touch, to her focus, to her own presence? She carefully placed her hand on the glowing A. As her palm made contact, the light intensified, spreading, morphing. The entire top surface of the box began to shimmer, the wood grain swirling like a liquid vortex. And then, with an almost imperceptible whisper of air, the top surface of the box didn't open. It dissolved. The wood seemed to dematerialize, leaving a clear, transparent window, revealing the contents within. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, were two objects. One was a small, intricately carved wooden figurine. A little girl, perhaps 5 or 6 years old, with long, braided hair and a shy, tentative smile. She wore a simple, old-fashioned dress. It was a beautiful, tender carving, radiating a profound sense of innocence and fragility. The second object was a single, aged, yellowed photograph. It was black and white, slightly faded, showing a young woman, perhaps in her late teens, holding the hand of a small girl. The little girl was the spitting image of the wooden figurine. The young woman was radiant, her face alight with a joyous, almost defiant smile. She had the same piercing blue eyes as Eleanor. Eleanor, her mother, but this was a younger Eleanor, decades younger, a girl Amelia had never known. A girl with a child Amelia had never known. Amelia's breath hitched. Her gaze dropped to the small girl in the photograph. Her eyes, wide and innocent, stared back. And then Amelia saw it. Written in faded ink on the back of the photograph, in Eleanor's early, more girlish handwriting, was a single, devastating name: Annalise. The world spun. Annalise. The name Amelia had lived in the shadow of her entire life. The name her parents had never spoken. The name that was a ghost in their house. A chilling presence. A silent threat. Amelia knew the story, or at least the fragmented, whispered version she had pieced together from hushed adult conversations and her father's rare, grim pronouncements. Annalise, Eleanor's first child, born before Amelia. A secret, a tragedy, an unbearable loss. Annalise, who had died very young, a crib death, or so she had always been told. But the name had always been associated with an unspoken terror in their home. Her mother would flinch at the slightest mention of it, her face paling, her eyes clouding with an unspeakable pain. Her father would stiffen, his jaw clenching, changing the subject with a brusque command. Annalise was the name that was never to be spoken, the wound that was never to be touched, the shadow that cast a pall over Eleanor's life, and by extension, over Amelia's. It was the name she feared, not because of what it was, but because of what it represented. An unfathomable grief, a profound trauma that had shaped her mother and thus shaped her. And now here was Annalise, in a box, left by her mother, with a key of understanding. What was her mother trying to tell her? What was the truth behind the name that had brought so much pain, so much silence? The quiet dread in Amelia's stomach erupted into a storm of unsettling questions. The box wasn't just a container for a secret. It was a Pandora's box of her family's hidden history. And Amelia, the logical architect, suddenly found herself at the precipice of an emotional abyss she had never known existed. Chapter 4. The Unwritten Chapters. Amelia sat on the floor of Eleanor's study, the open box before her, the wooden figurine of Annalise in one hand, the faded photograph in the other. Her mind raced, a whirlwind of fragmented memories and newly presented truths. Annalise, the unspoken, the feared, now tangibly present. She looked at the young Eleanor in the photograph, radiant, holding her child's hand. This wasn't the picture of grief she had always associated with Annalise. This was a picture of love, of vibrant life. It didn't fit the narrative of an unspeakable tragedy, a dark shadow. She felt a profound, almost desperate need for more. The box had opened, but the story was incomplete. This wasn't the full truth her mother had promised. This was merely the introduction to a hidden chapter. Amelia searched the box. Below the velvet lining, she felt a subtle rigidity. There was another layer. She carefully lifted the velvet. Beneath it, a stack of thin, aged envelopes, tied with a faded satin ribbon. And on the top envelope, in Eleanor's distinctive, elegant handwriting, was a single word: Annalise. Amelia's hands trembled as she untied the ribbon. Inside were letters, dozens of them, old, yellowed, some with brittle edges, their ink faded but still legible. They weren't addressed to anyone specific. They were Eleanor's letters to Annalise, a mother's secret correspondence with a ghost. The first letter was dated 1990, just 2 years after Amelia's birth, but before Amelia could remember Annalise being a forbidden name. Eleanor's handwriting was different then, more tentative, less assured. "My dearest Annalise," it began. "It's been a week since your birthday. You would be 10 now. I wonder what you would look like. Would you still have those bright, curious eyes? Your father and I, we speak of you less and less. It's too painful. But I won't forget you. I can't. Every night I whisper your name to the stars. And I remember your laughter. It echoes in my heart." Amelia choked back a sob. Her mother had been writing to Annalise for decades, secretly. A testament to a grief so profound it had to be hidden, nurtured in the quiet solace of letters that would never be sent. She continued reading, devouring each letter, each glimpse into her mother's agonizing journey. The letters spanned decades, chronicling Eleanor's life, her daily joys and sorrows, her attempts to navigate a world without her first child, all while raising Amelia. Eleanor wrote about her fear of the name, the way it haunted her, the way it created a barrier between her and David. And then she found a letter dated 2010, written shortly after Amelia had left for college. Eleanor's handwriting was firmer now, more resolved. "My sweet Annalise," it read, "I've been thinking so much about you lately, about our story, the truth, your father and I. We've carried this burden for so long, the lie, the fear, but it's not fair to you, or to Amelia. She deserves to know. The truth is heavy, my love, but it is also liberating. I've held it in all these years because I was afraid of shattering the fragile peace we built, afraid of the judgment, afraid of losing everything." Amelia frowned. The lie? What lie? The crib death narrative she had been given her entire life. Was that the lie? But why? What was the truth behind Annalise's death? What was so terrifying that it required decades of silence, of a mother writing secret letters to her lost child? She kept reading. The letters became more desperate, more filled with Eleanor's internal struggle to reveal the truth, to break the silence. But she never did, until now. This box, this final gift, the last letter was dated just months before Eleanor's passing. Her handwriting was frail, but resolute. "Annalise," it began, almost a plea. My time is short, and I can't leave this world without trying to write this, without telling Amelia. The key to your story, it's in the house, hidden in plain sight. It's not just about you, it's about me, about your father, about the choices we made out of fear. But love, my dearest, is stronger than fear. Always. Amelia will find it. I know she will. She is so much like you, and so much like me. She will understand, and she will finally, truly say goodbye. Amelia wept, her body shaking with profound emotion. The key of understanding, the resonance. It was all leading to a specific, tangible truth that had shaped her family's life, cast its long shadow over her own existence. The unspoken farewell wasn't just for Amelia to grieve Annalise. It was for Amelia to understand Eleanor's life, her pain, her courage, and her desperate final act of liberation. The fear associated with the name Annalise wasn't just about death. It was about the profound, hidden story that surrounded her. And Amelia, the logical architect, felt the ground shifting beneath her, revealing the unwritten chapters of her own family's history, a history steeped in secret sorrows and unspoken sacrifices. The box, once a symbol of her mother's hidden grief, was now a gateway to a much deeper, more unsettling truth. Chapter 5. The Architect of Truth. The letters left Amelia with more questions than answers. The repeated mention of the lie, the truth, and the choices we made out of fear hinted at a dark secret far more complex than a simple crib death. Eleanor was clearly implying that Annalise's story, as Amelia knew it, was not the full picture. But what was it? And where was this final key to your story that was in the house, hidden in plain sight? Amelia began to methodically search the house again, this time with a new purpose. She was no longer just grieving. She was an architect reconstructing a hidden past, driven by a profound need to understand her mother's agonizing secret. She started with Eleanor's study, the heart of her intellectual life. She meticulously went through every book, every folder, every dusty corner, searching for anything unusual, any anomaly that Eleanor might have deliberately left. Her father, David, called, checking in. He sounded distant, still locked in his own grief. Amelia wanted to ask him about Annalise, about the letters, but she hesitated. This was Eleanor's truth to reveal, a final gift. And the letters implied David was deeply involved in this lie. She needed to understand the full scope before confronting him. Amelia remembered Eleanor's love for riddles, for elaborate games. And then she remembered a seemingly innocuous detail: the antique grandfather clock in the main hall. A magnificent, intricately carved piece that had been in the family for generations. Eleanor wound it every Sunday, a ritual Amelia remembered from childhood. It was a symbol of permanence, of time, of tradition, and she remembered Eleanor. Years ago, telling her, sometimes the biggest secrets are kept by the things that tell us the time. Amelia walked to the grandfather clock. It stood tall and stately, its pendulum swinging with a gentle, hypnotic rhythm. She had always seen it as a beautiful piece of furniture. Now she looked at it with new eyes, searching for a hidden compartment, a secret mechanism. She ran her hands over the polished wood, over the ornate carvings. Nothing. Then she noticed the small brass plaque near the base, almost hidden by the shadows. It was etched with the names of family members, generations of thorns, dating back to the 18th century. Eleanor had often pointed it out, tracing the names with her finger, telling stories of their ancestors, and then Amelia saw it. A faint, almost imperceptible discoloration on the plaque around one specific name, a name that Eleanor had never spoken of with the usual accompanying anecdote. A name that, Amelia now realized, was subtly out of place in the chronology, a generation misplaced. Catherine Vance, born 1898, died 1980, beloved sister. Catherine Vance. Vance was Eleanor's maiden name, Catherine, her aunt. Eleanor had spoken of her Aunt Catherine only vaguely, as an eccentric spinster who lived in a small cottage on the outskirts of Boston, a recluse. But why was her name etched here, so prominently, yet so subtly out of place in the family tree? Almost as if inserted later. And why had Eleanor never offered any stories about her, unlike all the others? Amelia's architect's mind connected the dots, a missing link, a strange detail in a familiar object. She remembered something else about Catherine Vance. Eleanor had once casually mentioned that Aunt Catherine had been a keeper of secrets, a woman who lived a very private life, often disappearing for long periods, always returning with a quiet, knowing smile. And Eleanor, as a child, had often stayed with her. Could Aunt Catherine be the key to your story that was in the house, hidden in plain sight? Amelia frantically searched Eleanor's old address books, her Rolodexes, her digital contacts. She found an old faded index card with Catherine Vance's address. It was an address for a small historical society in Boston, one Eleanor had occasionally visited. Amelia drove to the historical society the next morning. It was a dusty, quiet place, filled with forgotten archives and the faint scent of old paper. She spoke to the librarian, a kindly, elderly woman who remembered Eleanor as a frequent visitor, particularly interested in the Vance family archives. Ah, Eleanor, the librarian mused, her eyes twinkling. A formidable woman, and she spent many, many hours in our special collection room, especially with the Vance papers and the adoption records. Adoption records. The words echoed in Amelia's mind, cold and clear. The lie, the fear, the choices made out of fear. Amelia's heart pounded. She requested access to the Vance family archives, specifically the adoption records, explaining her mother's recent passing and her desire to understand her family history. The librarian, sensing the profound importance of the moment, granted her access. In a quiet, secluded room, surrounded by dusty ledgers and brittle documents, Amelia found it. A thick, brown envelope marked Vance, private, do not open. But scrawled beneath it, in Eleanor's handwriting, barely visible, were the words, "For Amelia, my truth." Amelia's hands shook as she opened the envelope. Inside, carefully preserved, were several documents, a birth certificate and an adoption certificate. The birth certificate, Annalise Vance, born 1980, mother Eleanor Vance, father David Thorne, date of birth July 12, 1980. The adoption certificate, dated October 15, 1980, Annalise Vance, adopted by Catherine Vance. Amelia gasped, a guttural sound. Annalise hadn't died. She had been given away, adopted by her own great-aunt, the eccentric spinster Eleanor had rarely spoken of. Annalise hadn't died of crib death. She had been erased. Her existence a family secret, a desperate measure to preserve reputation, to hide a truth too shameful to bear. The crib death was the lie, a convenient fiction to explain her disappearance. The fear wasn't of grief, but of shame, of scandal, of the profound societal judgment that would fall upon Eleanor and David for having a child out of wedlock in the very conservative, genteel circles they inhabited in the early 1980s. Amelia collapsed onto the chair, the documents scattered around her, the air thick with the weight of generations of secrets. The image of the young, radiant Eleanor in the photograph, holding Annalise's hand, suddenly made painful sense. She hadn't been grieving Annalise's death. She had been trying to hold on to her, to say goodbye, knowing she was about to lose her forever. Not to the grave, but to a life lived in secret, just a few miles away. The letters, her mother's agonizing struggle, the unspoken farewell was not just for Amelia to understand Annalise's death, but to understand her life, her sacrifice, her family's profound, hidden sorrow. The name she feared, Annalise, was not just a symbol of a lost child, but of a hidden life, a profound familial secret that had shaped her mother's entire existence, and by extension, her own. And now, the architect of truth, Amelia, had to decide what to do with the blueprint of a family built on a lie. Chapter 6: The Unfolding Shadow and the Path to Light. The revelation of Annalise's adoption, her life lived under the care of Aunt Catherine, shattered Amelia's understanding of her family. It was a truth so profound, so deeply hidden, that it reshaped her entire perception of her mother, her father, and the very foundation of her own upbringing. The fear she had always associated with the name Annalise was not a fear of death, but a fear of the truth, a fear of the unspoken shame and sacrifice that had defined her mother's early life. Amelia reread Eleanor's letters, each word now imbued with a new, agonizing clarity. Eleanor's internal struggle, her profound grief for a child she could visit but never claim, her desperation to protect Amelia from the shadow of this secret, all made heart-wrenching sense. The box, the key of understanding, the riddles, it was all Eleanor's final desperate attempt to unburden herself, to confess, and to liberate Amelia from a burden she didn't even know she carried. The immediate question was, what happened to Annalise? If she hadn't died in infancy, where was she now? Amelia meticulously searched the Historical Society's records for any further mention of Catherine Vance or Annalise Vance. She found death certificates. Catherine Vance had passed away in 1980, the same year Annalise was born and adopted. Amelia's heart sank. Had Annalise died young after all? But then, she found a series of carefully filed school records for an Annalise Vance, attending a small private school in the outskirts of Boston, just a few towns over from where Amelia grew up. The dates matched. Annalise had attended school, seemingly had a life. The records showed good grades, a love for art and music, a quiet demeanor. Then, at the age of 18, a final school record. And nothing more. No college, no marriage, no death certificate. Just silence. Amelia felt a cold dread. Had Annalise simply vanished, as Arthur Finch had? Another lost life? Another broken narrative? She decided she had to confront her father, David Thorne, the man who had lived with this secret, this lie, for decades. She called him, her voice steady, determined. "Dad, we need to talk about Annalise." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Then, a sharp intake of breath. "Amelia, how do you know that name?" His voice was filled with a familiar fear, a deep-seated apprehension that had always surrounded the forbidden name. Amelia calmly explained everything: the box, the letters, the discovery of the adoption records. She spoke of Eleanor's final wish to reveal the truth. David listened in stunned silence, his carefully constructed emotional walls crumbling under the weight of decades of unspoken truth. He arrived at the house hours later, his face pale, his eyes red-rimmed. He sat in Eleanor's study, the same room where the box had revealed its secrets. "Your mother," he began, his voice hoarse with unshed tears. She carried this burden alone for so long, and I let her. We were so young, Amelia, so afraid of the scandal of our families. We believed it was the only way to protect everyone, to give Annalise a quiet life away from the judgment. We always believed we were doing the right thing. But the guilt, it ate at us, especially you, Mother." He confirmed everything. Annalise had been given to Catherine, Eleanor's eccentric aunt who doted on her. Annalise lived a quiet, normal life, believing Catherine was her mother. Eleanor and David visited her often, always as aunt and uncle. It was an agonizing charade, a constant torment for Eleanor. Annalise grew up to be a beautiful, kind woman. David continued, his voice trembling. She was an artist, like her namesake. She painted beautiful landscapes. She was a quiet soul. She never married, never had children. And then she got sick, very sick, and she passed away just a few years ago, before your mother got sick. Your mother, she was with her at the end. She was finally able to tell Annalise the truth, who she really was. Annalise, she accepted it. She understood. She forgave us. She said she had always felt a deep, unspoken connection to your mother. A resonance, she called it. She said she felt your mother's love, even when she didn't know why. Tears streamed down David's face, tears of decades of suppressed grief and guilt finally unleashed. Amelia listened, her own tears falling freely. The pain was immense, but so was the profound sense of connection, of understanding. Annalise had known. She had felt her mother's love, even through the veil of secrecy and adoption. The name she had feared, Annalise, was no longer a shadow. It was a person, a life, a profound act of love and sacrifice. David then revealed one last detail, a final piece of the puzzle. After Annalise passed, your mother, she brought something back from Annalise's cottage, something Annalise had left specifically for her. She said it was a gift, a symbol of their final peace, and she told me, "This is for Amelia. When the time is right, it's a key to understanding that love, Amelia, is the only thing that truly lasts, no matter the shadows." Amelia's heart pounded. A final gift, a key. David led her to a hidden compartment in Eleanor's antique writing desk, one Amelia had never found. Inside, nestled in soft silk, was a single, intricately carved wooden box. Larger than the first, this one was made of light, almost translucent birch. It had no clasp, no lock. And on its lid, carved with exquisite detail, was a symbol, a flowing, intertwined double helix, resembling a DNA strand, but also two figures embracing. Amelia's hands trembled as she touched it. It opened with a feather-light touch, no resistance at all. Inside, bathed in a soft, ethereal light, was a single object, a small, beautifully rendered oil painting, a landscape, a quiet, serene field bathed in golden light, with a single magnificent oak tree in the foreground. Its roots were deep, strong, visible above the ground, and etched faintly onto the bark of the tree, barely visible unless you knew to look, were two sets of initials intertwined, E+D, Eleanor and David. But beside them, subtly, beautifully integrated into the leaves, a faint A, Annalise. The painting was signed simply Annalise. This was it, the true key. Not a physical object, but a tangible expression of a life, a love, a final act of artistic and emotional liberation. It was Annalise's final gift, her own unspoken farewell, a message of peace and forgiveness to her family. Amelia looked at the painting, then at her father, tears streaming down her face, but a profound, healing warmth spreading through her chest. The shadow had unfolded. The fear had dissipated. Annalise wasn't a terrifying secret. She was a beloved sister. A hidden chapter of profound love and sacrifice. The house, once filled with the silence of grief, now hummed with a different kind of presence. Not ghosts of fear, but echoes of love. Amelia had not just inherited a house. She had inherited a legacy of untold stories, a profound understanding of the human heart, and a new, deeper connection to her mother. The box, the key, the name she had feared, they had led her not to sorrow, but to a profound truth, a liberation. She was no longer just an architect of buildings. She was an architect of truth, rebuilding her family's narrative, brick by emotional brick, finally bringing light to the darkest, most unspoken corners of their shared history. And in doing so, she had found her own profound peace, a harmony born of understanding, forgiveness, and the enduring power of love that transcends even death and decades of silence. Chapter 7. The threads intertwined. The revelation of Annalise's existence, her life, and her quiet passing had irrevocably altered the landscape of Amelia's world. The initial shock had given way to a profound sense of understanding, a deep empathy for the agonizing choices her parents had made under societal pressure. The fear associated with the name Annalise had evaporated, replaced by a tender sadness and an immense sense of familial connection to a sister she had never known, yet now felt so intimately connected to. Amelia and David spent weeks, then months, talking. For the first time in their lives, they spoke openly and honestly about Annalise, about Eleanor's burden, about their shared guilt and sorrow. David, released from the decades-long secret, found a catharsis he never thought possible. He shared more memories of Annalise, of her quiet nature, her artistic spirit, the times they had secretly visited her, pretending to be doting aunt and uncle. Amelia learned that Annalise had been aware, in her later years, that Eleanor was her biological mother, and had accepted it with grace and profound understanding. Her last painting, the oak tree, was a symbol of her forgiveness and her enduring connection to them. Amelia's sister Clara was shocked, then deeply saddened by the revelation. She too had always felt the unspoken tension around the name Annalise, but had never understood its source. The truth brought them closer as sisters, united by this shared, profound family history. They mourned Annalise together, belatedly, but with a depth of understanding that made their grief meaningful. The two boxes, the mahogany one from Eleanor and the birch one from Annalise, became sacred objects in Amelia's home. The mahogany box, with its key of understanding, symbolized Eleanor's desperate plea for truth and liberation. The birch box, with Annalise's painting of the oak tree, represented forgiveness, enduring love, and the quiet strength of a life lived with grace despite hidden sorrows. They were not just boxes. They were tangible testaments to the complex, resilient tapestry of their family's love. Amelia, the architect, felt a profound shift in her own life. Her meticulous order, once a shield against unpredictable emotions, now felt more like a foundation upon which to build new, more authentic connections. She found herself less guarded, more open to vulnerability. The experience had taught her that true strength wasn't in rigid control, but in the courage to face uncomfortable truths, to embrace the messiness of human emotion, and to forgive. She began to incorporate this newfound understanding into her work. No longer just designing buildings, she became fascinated by the narrative of space, how environments reflect and shape human lives. She started taking on projects that involved restoring historical homes, delving into their pasts, uncovering their hidden stories, seeing the echoes of previous inhabitants in the very structures she worked on. She found a profound satisfaction in bringing light to forgotten histories, drawing parallels to her own family's journey. Amelia even began to paint in her spare time, a quiet hobby inspired by Annalise's artistic spirit. She found solace in the flow of color, the creation of beauty, a connection to the sister she had lost and found. Her paintings often featured trees, always with deep visible roots, a symbol of endurance, of hidden foundations, of the quiet strength that underlies all life. The house no longer felt shadowed by a terrifying secret. Instead, it was filled with the vibrant presence of Eleanor's enduring love, Annalise's graceful spirit, and David's quiet strength. The unspoken was now spoken, the hidden brought to light. The fear had given way to understanding, and understanding to a deeper, more profound love. Years passed. Amelia, now in her 50s, reflected on the journey. The initial grief for her mother had evolved into a complex tapestry of gratitude, sorrow, and profound appreciation for Eleanor's final, brave act. The key Eleanor left her hadn't just opened a box, it had opened Amelia's heart to the full, messy, beautiful truth of her family. She often visited the small, quiet cemetery where Eleanor was buried, and where, thanks to the unearthed truth, a small, elegant marker for Annalise Vance, with her dates of birth and passing, now stood beside her parents, finally acknowledging her rightful place in the family. It was a simple act, a quiet testament to a lifetime of hidden love, and the ultimate triumph of truth. The memory of the name she had feared, Annalise, no longer whispered fear. It resonated with a quiet, powerful love. It was the name of her sister, a part of her own lineage, a testament to her mother's profound strength and sacrifice. Amelia had learned that some truths are not meant to be hidden, and some fears, once confronted, reveal not darkness but unexpected light. The journey, initiated by a golden key and a cryptic message, had led her to uncover the profound, enduring power of family, forgiveness, and the liberating force of a love that, even when unspoken, weaves itself inextricably into the very fabric of who we are. And in discovering her family's hidden story, Amelia had finally, truly, found herself. The silence in the house, once a heavy shroud, had transformed. It was now a deep, resonant hum, a symphony of intertwined threads, of past and present, of sorrow and profound, enduring love. The unspoken farewell had been fulfilled, not with a simple goodbye, but with a lifetime of understanding, healing, and the powerful, liberating echo of a family made whole. Chapter 8. The Weight of Legacy. The unburdening of the truth about Annalise created a ripple effect through the Thorne family, extending beyond Amelia, David, and Clara. Distant cousins who had only vague, uncomfortable memories of Aunt Catherine's peculiar arrangement began to understand the quiet sadness that had always clung to Eleanor. The family narrative, once fractured and incomplete, slowly began to mend, woven together by the threads of honest remembrance. Amelia found herself becoming the inadvertent historian of her family, the keeper of the newly revealed truth, gently sharing the story of Eleanor's profound sacrifice and Annalise's hidden life. This new role was both a responsibility and a profound source of peace for Amelia. She realized that her mother's final act had been not only for her, but for the entire family, a desperate, loving attempt to heal old wounds and ensure that the next generation would not be burdened by the same unspoken shame. Amelia's professional life also continued to evolve. Her architectural firm became known not just for its innovative designs, but for its sensitive approach to historical preservation, often incorporating elements that honored a building's past, its unseen narratives. She worked on projects that revitalized old structures, peeling back layers of paint and plaster to reveal original craftsmanship, much like she had peeled back the layers of her family's secrets to reveal their hidden truths. She found a deep resonance in this work, a tangible connection between the physical act of building and the emotional act of rebuilding. She lectured at universities, not about architectural theory, but about the profound connection between personal history, memory, and the spaces we inhabit. She spoke of how even the most mundane objects, a grandfather clock, a wooden box, could hold the most profound secrets, waiting for the right moment, the right key of understanding, to reveal them. She never explicitly shared her family's story in these lectures, but the depth of her insight, her empathy for hidden narratives, captivated her audiences. The two boxes remained central to her home, her personal altar to a rediscovered past. The mahogany box, now permanently transparent on top, sat in Eleanor's study, revealing the precious letters within. Amelia often reread them, each time finding new layers of her mother's strength and love. The birch box, with Annalise's oak tree painting, hung proudly in Amelia's own living room, a vibrant testament to resilience and forgiveness. The tree, with its deep, visible roots, became a powerful symbol for Amelia, the importance of knowing one's origins, of embracing the full, complex tapestry of one's family history, even the parts that were once hidden in shadow. Amelia also fostered a new, gentle relationship with her father, David. The decades of unspoken tension, the shared burden of the secret, had finally dissolved. They found comfort in their shared grief for Eleanor and in their newfound understanding of Annalise. They would sit for hours, reminiscing, piecing together fragments of memory, finally able to speak their daughter's name without flinching. Their bond, once fractured, became stronger, deeper, built on the solid ground of shared truth. Clara, Amelia's sister, found solace in the truth in her own way. She became more involved in volunteer work, particularly with organizations supporting single mothers and helping families navigate difficult life choices. She often said that Eleanor's story had given her a profound appreciation for the silent battles people fought and a desire to offer support where shame and judgment once might have prevailed. Amelia, now older, wiser, and more deeply connected to her emotional landscape, understood that grief was not a single, linear process. It was a winding path, filled with unexpected turns and profound discoveries. Her initial grief for her mother had been sharp, immediate. The grief for Annalise, the sister she never knew, was different. A slow, unfolding sorrow, mixed with immense gratitude for the chance to know her at all. She often thought about the initial fear she had associated with the name Annalise. It was a phantom fear, born of ignorance and suppressed truth. Once the truth was revealed, the fear vanished, replaced by love and understanding. It was a powerful lesson that sometimes the things we fear most are simply misunderstood, waiting for us to shine a light on them. The house, once a silent monument to loss, now vibrated with the echoes of lives fully lived, secrets bravely revealed, and love that, even when hidden, found a way to endure. Amelia still heard whispers in the silence, but they were no longer whispers of fear or unfulfilled longing. They were the gentle, comforting hum of her family's complete story, a symphony of resilience, forgiveness, and enduring connection. The key Eleanor had left was not merely to a box, but to a deeper understanding of life itself, that love, in its purest form, can inspire the most profound sacrifices, endure the longest silences, and ultimately liberate the human heart. Amelia Thorne, the architect, had built a new foundation for her family's legacy, not with steel and glass, but with truth, empathy, and the unwavering belief that every life, every love deserved to be known, cherished, and finally celebrated in the full light of understanding. The unspoken farewell had blossomed into a profound, vibrant legacy, echoing through the generations. Chapter 9. The Garden of Unburdened Souls. As the years continued to unfold, Amelia, now a respected figure in her field, found herself drawn more and more to the tangible symbols of her family's newly unburdened history. Her mother Eleanor's garden, once a meticulously ordered but somewhat contained space, began to transform under Amelia's touch. It had always been a place of solace for Eleanor, a reflection of her desire for control and beauty. Now, Amelia cultivated it not just for order, but for wildness, for the intricate, tangled beauty of life that mirrored her family's complex story. She planted oak saplings, small, sturdy trees with the promise of deep roots, in honor of Annalise's painting. She chose flowers that represented different stages of her mother's life: vibrant roses for Eleanor's youth and fierce love, delicate lilies for her hidden grief, and resilient hydrangeas for her enduring strength. The garden became a living tapestry, a testament to the cycles of life, loss, and renewal. It was a physical manifestation of the healing that had begun with the opening of Eleanor's box. Amelia often walked through the garden, her hand brushing against the leaves, the petals. She would talk to her mother and to Annalise, not in hushed whispers of guilt or sorrow, but in quiet conversations of remembrance and gratitude. She felt their presence there, not as ghosts of the past, but as spirits intertwined with the very fabric of her present. The fear that had once clung to the name Annalise was completely gone, replaced by a profound sense of connection and an almost joyful understanding. She found herself sharing small, carefully chosen parts of Annalise's story with her closest friends, people who had known Eleanor and observed the subtle shadows that sometimes crossed her face. The truth was met with empathy, sadness, and often a deeper appreciation for Eleanor's quiet strength and the societal pressures that had forced such a heartbreaking choice. The act of sharing, even selectively, was another layer of unburdening, another thread woven into the tapestry of their healing. Her relationship with David, her father, continued to deepen. Their weekly dinners became less about formalities and more about shared memories, quiet reflections, and the mutual support that comes from having weathered a profound storm together. David, in his later years, found a quiet peace he hadn't known since his youth, a peace born of confession and forgiveness. He often said that Eleanor's final gift, the truth, had truly liberated them all. Clara, Amelia's sister, became an ardent supporter of Amelia's archival work, particularly in unearthing hidden family histories. She recognized the profound importance of truth-telling, of allowing silenced voices to finally be heard. Together, they established a small nonprofit organization dedicated to helping individuals research their own family secrets, providing guidance and resources for those navigating complex, often painful, historical discoveries. They believed that knowing one's full story, even the difficult parts, was essential for true self-understanding and healing. The grandfather clock in the main hall continued its steady tick-tock, a comforting rhythm of time passing, of life continuing. It no longer held the weight of a hidden secret, but the quiet dignity of a witness to generations of thorns, of their joys and sorrows, their silences and their ultimate truths. The M carved subtly into its stand. The key of understanding was now a symbol of profound insight, a testament to the hidden resonance that existed in the world, waiting to be discovered by an open heart. Amelia came to understand that the initial fear she had felt when she saw the name Annalise was not about the name itself, but about the unknown. It was the fear of a shadow whose form she could not discern, whose source she could not identify. Once the shadow was brought into the light, once its origins were understood, the fear dissolved, replaced by a deep sense of compassion and connection. The entire experience had reshaped Amelia's perception of love, grief, and legacy. Love was not always easy or straightforward. It was often messy, complex, and required immense sacrifice. Grief was not a finite process, but an unfolding understanding, a continuous integration of loss into the tapestry of life. And legacy was not just about what was left behind, but about the truths revealed, the healing fostered, and the quiet harmony created from the dissonances of the past. The house, once filled with the silence that screamed of a missing presence and a hidden sorrow, now hummed with a symphony of shared memories, rediscovered love, and the profound peace that comes from an unburdened soul. The unspoken farewell had truly become a full, resonant chord, echoing through the generations, the testament to the enduring power of family. Truth, and the limitless capacity of the human heart to heal and to love, even across the vast expanse of time and secrecy. Amelia, the architect, had built not just structures, but a bridge to a past that had once haunted her, finding in its depths not fear, but the brightest, most enduring light. Chapter 10. The Golden Thread of Revelation. The profound impact of Eleanor's final gift, the revelation of Annalise, continued to unfurl in Amelia's life like a carefully woven tapestry. Each passing year brought new layers of understanding, new opportunities for healing, not just for her immediate family, but also for the broader network of relations who had dimly sensed, but never truly grasped, the depth of Eleanor's hidden sorrow. Amelia's work as an architect evolved even further. She found herself increasingly drawn to projects that involved complex family histories, where the structures themselves held secrets. She worked on the renovation of old family estates, delving into their archives, consulting with descendants, and often uncovering parallel stories of hidden lives, forgotten sacrifices, and profound, enduring loves. Her unique empathy, honed by her own experience, made her invaluable in these sensitive projects. She didn't just rebuild walls, she helped rebuild narratives. She established a scholarship in Annalise's name for young artists and musicians from disadvantaged backgrounds, recognizing Annalise's quiet passion for the arts. It was a tangible way to honor her sister's memory and to transform a past of hidden shame into a future of opportunity and recognition. The scholarship became a source of immense pride for Amelia, David, and Clara, a living legacy that amplified Annalise's quiet presence in the world. The small, intricately carved wooden figurine of the little girl Annalise remained a cherished object in Amelia's study. It was no longer a symbol of fear, but of innocence, of a life that, though short and hidden, was deeply loved. Amelia would often hold it, tracing the delicate details, reflecting on the profound journey that this tiny, fragile carving had initiated. The yellowed photograph of young Eleanor holding Annalise's hand, once a painful enigma, was now framed and displayed prominently in Amelia's living room. It was a testament to a mother's fierce, protective love, a love that had defied societal norms and endured decades of agonizing silence. It spoke volumes about Eleanor's character, her strength, and her ultimate courage in revealing her deepest truth. Amelia, now a grandmother herself, found a new tenderness in her interactions with her own grandchildren. She spoke to them openly about family, about the importance of honesty, about the sometimes messy but always profound power of love. She instilled in them a sense of curiosity about their lineage, encouraging them to ask questions, to seek understanding, and to always embrace the full spectrum of their family's story, light and shadow alike. She wanted them to grow up in a world where secrets didn't fester, where truth was a foundation, and where every member of their family, known or hidden, was cherished. The garden, Eleanor's oasis, continued to flourish under Amelia's care. The oak trees she had planted grew taller, their roots stretching deeper, mirroring the growth and deepening of her own understanding. The vibrant flowers bloomed in their seasons, a natural rhythm of beauty and renewal that brought Amelia immense comfort. She found that tending to the garden was a meditative practice, a quiet dialogue with the past, a grounding connection to the enduring cycle of life. The concept of resonance, which Eleanor had spoken of in her will, now held a profound meaning for Amelia. It wasn't just a musical term or a cryptic clue. It was the invisible force that connected lives, transcended time, and allowed love to echo across generations, even when memories faded or truths were hidden. She felt it in the soft hum of the house, in the rustle of the oak leaves, in the quiet conversations with her family, and in the enduring peace within her own heart. The golden key that Eleanor had symbolically left for her, the key of understanding and readiness, had unlocked not just a box, but an entire universe of hidden truth and profound healing. It had led Amelia from a place of grief and unspoken fear to a landscape of acceptance, forgiveness, and ultimately a liberated soul. The shadow that had once loomed over her family, cast by a name whispered in fear, had finally unfolded, revealing itself not as a darkness, but as a testament to the enduring, complex, and ultimately redemptive power of love. Amelia's life became a living embodiment of Eleanor's final wish, a life lived in truth, filled with the profound harmony of an unburdened spirit, forever connected by the golden threads of revelation.